some of the fun. But my name's Mike Eshoo. I'm a technical program manager with AWS. Specifically, I'm on the AWS Managed Services team, and I'm joined by my colleague, Donnell, who's one of our business development managers and been doing a lot of partnership with InterVision, thinking about how we can go to market together, delivering exactly what Mike was able to cover. And then I'm also joined by Forest Johns, who's really our principal product manager on the AMS team. Forrest, you want to say hello just so folks can orient to your voice and frankly, you get a sound check in? Forrest? Right. Well, Forrest, if you work through your audio and you're able to join in and speak, maybe say hello at some point of time, and we'll make sure. Otherwise, we'll work through it as we transition over to you. Donnell, were you able to get your audio working? All right. Well, sorry for that, but we'll get going. So, what we're really going to talk about and really just build on what Mike Shea had gone over. Right. I loved the detail he brought into his presentation because we're going to stay up a little bit higher, in the stack around how AWS is thinking about helping customers move to the cloud and really relying on partners such as InterVision to help customers such as yourself make that transition, right? And so we're going to talk about a couple of the facts or the statistics that was brought up. We were able to work with Forrester and commissioned a study of return on investment customers had made, working with partners, enjoying the benefits of AWS via Amazon Managed Services. And so we'll talk a little bit about how that whole stack works. But I love this visual, right? Because I think it really ties into what you saw Mike present in terms of that migration journey. And then, of course, Amazon would love to challenge InterVision and frankly, you as the customer to build to a flywheel type approach, right? Because once you go through that process, you're going to find that you've built this machine. Often we'll refer to it as migration factory, where you can leverage your success and rebake it into future workloads. I love the incremental nature of taking a step to cloud. And Mike Shea, I was going to break in and pose a question to you, and perhaps I will towards the end of my session, which is, what is, like, if you had to pick from all of the different areas that you have to cover, and I agreed with all of it, each of that needs to be covered, but one or two things you can do to take that first step cloud. Like, how do you take that first step? I think oftentimes that's so hard. Advice I give customers is don't take a first giant leap. Like, unless you've got, a very compelling event where you need to rapidly exit a data center, try to take small steps in your cloud journey. So you're building that capability, you're building the trust from your business into what IT is able to deliver back. Mike Shea, I don't know if you're on the line, but I'll put you on the spot. What do you think oftentimes that first step is? And then I'll perhaps highlight how that I might believe you can get a good flywheel going as a result of that first step.
Mike, I might have missed that. The first step in.
Yeah, I think all of the steps in your migration journey that InterVision would advocate for really resonated with me. But if I had a customer who's like, but boy, Mike, I know I need to do all those things. How can I take one first step to actually get started on my cloud journey?
I think I use that happy place analogy. It was kind of hilarious to see this client who was, extremely mature in the cloud, kind of going back to designing that foundation, and so you can't do that. You can't spend too much time making sure you've got that in place.
I agree with you, right? And you've got to get that done. And I mean, you essentially led me right into my next slide, right? Is let me explain the transformation flywheel. And I think you and I think about it the same. We've only been working together for a short time, but I think we're well aligned on the business goal and what you're able to do for the business, right? Is to drive migrations, then optimize that which you've migrated, perhaps modernize that which you've optimized, which then opens the door up for innovation, right? Adding new business features, more agilely, more capable, more easy to experiment. Once you're in cloud-enabled technologies, you can easily do blue-green testing or A/B testing because you have the infrastructure at your fingertips. And when you run those experiments and you realize, hey, this didn't really work, no problem, just kill the infrastructure and try another experiment. When you find that it does work, you can bleed over 100% of production traffic, right? So that's like how I could imagine a monolithic app being split up and optimized into cloud and then modernized into serverless type technologies or perhaps leveraging these different features of auto scaling or AWS Route 50 or Amazon Route 53 to then allow that innovation to occur, right? To me, when I think about getting from migrate to optimize to modernize and innovate, this is the business result, right? This is what IT is able to offer back to the business to really get IT innovation impacting business results. But exactly as you say, Mike, what you have to do is step back and establish the foundation. And this is going to be less interesting to the business. The business probably doesn't care that much about the foundation. They expect it from you. It's table stakes. If you don't have that foundation established and you haven't taken the time to build a migration factory to help bring those applications over in a repeatable, seamless, trustworthy process, your business isn't going to want to take advantage of that, what you want them to do around optimized modernization and innovation. They're not going to be able to enjoy cloud native benefits because you've not built that foundation for them. And they're not going to be interested in coming to IT with new application ideas or new commercial off the shelf software, right? So you have to take the time to build this foundation so that new application demand, cloud native application demand, migration factories, and that foundation itself are in place. And it's not the fancy stuff. Often we say it's differentiated heavy lifting of infrastructure, and in AMS's case, AWS Managed Services, in our case, it's the undifferentiated heavy lifting of IT operations. Nobody likes dealing with patch cycles, but we know we have to do it, right, in order to run a safe, secure, compliant environment. So that's why AMS exists, is to do the stuff that's uninteresting so that InterVision and InterVision's end customers like yourself are able to focus on that which delivers business value around migration, optimization, modernization, and innovation, right? Let's try to push that undifferentiated heavy lifting back to the cloud provider so you don't have to do it. That frees up your resources to do what's really meaningful to the business, hopefully drive revenue or deliver real results to your ultimate end customers, right? And so the challenges that get in the way of you doing that are exactly what we're trying to solve with the model we've built with InterVision, which is we'll look after the security, compliance, scalability, the reliability concerns you might have with InterVision's consulting, right? Out of the box, the AMS landing zone would provide an attestable PCI environment, a HIPAA eligible environment that's been audited against high trust, ISO, SOC, FedRAMP, tons of compliance we're bringing to the table so that InterVision can help you mold your business applications to take care of that out-of-box compliance and speed your time to value, right? And so then you have these long production timelines to getting to production because you don't have that foundation. But we're going to put that foundation in rapidly, less than a month, essentially as fast as you'll let us go, we can be production ready. And then you don't necessarily need to pull in those skills of cloud migration and post-cloud migration operations so that you can meet the business case you've promised to your CFO. InterVision is going to be able to provide those migration skills or coach you on developing your own competency, but you get through that one-time migration cost, and then you can get back to innovation of new applications, retiring old applications if they have monolithic architectures and so on. Obviously you're going to need robust operations environments to do this. We want to make that easy. We want to take that off the list of blockers as your CIO is diligencing what you might need to do to get to production. Look, we've brought in trusted vendors. They offer this SLA. We're buying this SLA from them. So dear CIO, dear VP operations, like we've covered all our bases. We believe we have a robust environment. We've been through game day simulations and DR drills and the following. So we believe we're ready to go into production. Instead of taking months or years to get there, we can get there in weeks, right? And then you need spend models that are flexible with what you're doing. So as you experiment with a little or a lot, or if you have to step back in that experiment, you should have flexible pricing. And so we're able to build a model with InterVision where we can bill on a month-to-month basis without contract. So what InterVision is built upon, and I thought Mike's slide articulated it really well in terms of all the value that needs to be delivered on top of AMS. Remember, we're down here delivering this undifferentiated infrastructure operations with cloud experts. We're fueled by automation. We offer this secure and compliant landing zone, and you can see the different compliances we advocate. We have ongoing cost optimization, so helping InterVision with that at the infrastructure level, where they're going to be able to help you design in more cost-effective application patterns. No vendor lock-in, right? These models and these contracting vehicles aren't going to lock you into AMS. We're not going to say, hey, for InterVision to sell you AMS, we need to have a 5-year contract. No, we're happy to sell month to month. So no contracts from that perspective, and then month-to-month based billing on with consumption-based pricing, right? So again, you're only paying what you use, both for your services as well as for your underlying cloud infrastructure. And we've built all of this on standard AWS tools, and then the customer or InterVision remains ownership of that account. So it's not something AWS owns that we can't keep you out of. It's really your property that InterVision and AMS operate with them. And so, the scope of AMS, I think it was summed up best by that multi-layer slide that Mike presented. So I'll go over this quite quickly. Supporting that infrastructure level AWS operations up to the patched operating system. So through provisioning and onboarding, security and compliance, which I've really kind of focused on, again, highlighting our operational capabilities below, monitoring and alerting, insights and cost optimization. Patch and backup, boy, I mean, it's so easy to say patch and backup. Anybody that works in IT operations appreciates how challenging that can be. Wrapping the whole of AWS in a change management layer, if your model requires preventative controls, we can certainly support that versus giving unfettered access to AWS APIs. Leading incident management with an infrastructure related, supporting you in doing that. If that means escalating up to an operating system vendor through AWS support, where we white glove that. Leading infrastructure incidents and so on, and then ultimately supporting service integration if we need to integrate AWS APIs or InterVision APIs back to your service management suite. We've done that with several customers. It's quite easy to do. So with that, hopefully that gives you a quick high-level view of AMS. I think the idea of InterVision delivering the value-added services on top of AMS makes a ton of sense for a turnkey solution for a customer to get successful migrating into cloud or building new capabilities or serverless applications in cloud. Take those first steps, and I'm really pleased to introduce Forest Johns, who's going to take you through really that statistic that Mike Shea introduced around, I believe it was a 243% ROI benefit that our colleagues at Forrester, through their independent research, chartered by AWS, was able to observe. So Forrest, how's that audio coming, and are you ready to take over the screen and present your content?
Yeah, I can hear you good. Can you guys hear me all right?
Yeah, you're coming through loud and cleared. So we're going to pass the buck over to you, Forrest, now.
Indeed.
Okay, just a second here. Jennifer, can you grab that? I'm actually not able to.
And while we do that, of course, we're in the Q&A box. So if you have any questions for us at AWS as it relates to what AMS is doing, what AWS is doing, we're pleased to answer that in the chat, and we can get a multi-layer engagement going here in the webinar. But again, thanks so much to the InterVision team for having us, and I'm excited to hear what Forrest got once we get his share going.
All right, looks like I have control now. So let me just...
Perfect. Sorry about the delay there, guys.
Forrest was sharing, he's got his kids at home today. It was Hawaiian lunch day for Forrest and the kids today. So though I wish every day was Hawaiian lunch day, because I enjoy how Forrest is dressed for the webinar.
Yeah, exactly. And I may get video bomb of my kids running here. Apologies in advance.
And Forrest, you've got the presenter view projecting. So I don't know if you might want to share the other screen.
Yeah, let me see if I can do the stop sharing.
Mike, I'm on the other side. I think the work from home webinar is more exciting. It's a little more authentic, a little less scripted. We're here dealing with the same challenges everybody is. So good fun.
Hey, Forrest, if you share again, I'll be able to help you out.
Yeah, I'm just going to share my screen here, and I took it off. I have two monitors, so hopefully that's better.
Yep, you've got it, Forrest.
Fantastic.
Now we're seeing the presentation view, the right view, the whole slide.
There we go. All right, well, let me just kick it off. Like, the reason we did this, we've long philosophized that we have an impact with customers, not just like the operating outcomes, but also accelerating things. And because time and again, we've had our customers come to us and say, we want to move in, and give us some prescriptive guidance, right? And so generally, what we've done is we've come to the customer with 1,000 answers, right? They may not like all of them, and we can tweak, the 1-200 to fit their business, but that's a lot better than going to a customer and saying, here's 1,000 questions, and let's work through each and every one of them. You can see how like the delay can end up, taking place there. And so what we did is, we wanted this to be blind, impartial, non-influenced by us. Obviously, it's a study that we engaged Forrester for here. They had models that, were really good in terms of, representing the total economic impact. And what they did essentially is, focus on 5 of our customers who, have been running with us the longest, and also had considered doing it themselves. And I guess that's really what we looked at. So the TEI framework that Forrester put together is different than the TCO and ROI because it takes in some of these other categories here, right? So in addition to just the IT impact and the cost and cost savings, there was also, and the business impact, like what is the impact to, they also looked at things like risk mitigation, reward, and flexibility, right? Some of these intangibles. And so later in the slides I have, we'll kind of walk through a few of those and just where they saw some of those benefits that, aren't necessarily traditionally quantifiable, but, based on some of the other research they did, were obviously impactful to the end outcome for the customers. Let's see if I can advance my slide here. So as I mentioned, it was a multi-step approach here. And what we really had to do is just give the context to to Forrester, right? So we positioned them with, the stakeholders that we worked with day in, day out. They were crucial in the migration and the initial business decision, had done all the studying on their side in terms of why they made the decision to go with the service. And came back essentially in an interview setting where they presented data. Again, we were no part, and it was really them telling their story. This was details they weren't obviously shared with us either, right? Because they obviously made their decisions on their own. And so, with those interviews, what they attempted to do, because they didn't want to make it identifiable to each of these customers, is they used the data essentially to create a composite customer, right? And then looked at the impacts across all these different categories for each of the individual customers to kind of have this mock customer or persona that would show the influence, right? And then that could be more broadly applied to people doing, this is our survey here. um, Broadly applied to other customers, who may or may not, have relations to that composite customer, but it was more generic in the sense that they could probably more do so, right? We actually try to get a really good smattering of our customers across different industries and verticals. Um, and, for us, it was important that, we came out with a couple things, right? So there's this financial model, a case study, and then, the thing that we got out of it was a calculator so that customers could input their details and then sort of in their particular, situation, come up with a result. And so they could see if they had similar impacts to their business. Okay. And in terms of, reviewing and finalizing the results, we had to figure that out. So in terms of disclosure, so obviously we have the full case study here, and it's available for download. We commissioned it with Forrester directly. Forrester made no assumptions, on the returns, and really, we provided the data that we would provide any of our customers in terms of decision making, and they were, they came to their own conclusions using their models and their experience. We reviewed and provided feedback, but we made no changes to the study, right? So there were some clarifications, positioning of the case study and the wording. And, originally when we first looking at it, we did focus heavily on the migration acceleration output of it, but obviously there's a huge operate advantage to our service as well. And so we used that as an opportunity to highlight some of those. For example, one of our customers saw a 50% reduction in operate incidents. And then obviously the time to resolution was much quicker too. The next slide here. So in terms of the customer profile and the experience with AMS, the needs were pretty consistent across all our customers. A lot of them realized they didn't have the skill set, right? And there's always this idea that you can hire, train, and retain to fill the skill gap, but that is a longer proposition. It takes time to train people out, particularly if you're retasking individuals who are used to doing on-premise. The tool chains are different, the responsibility is different. The other aspect here is that often teams will pivot to a DevOps team. Those individuals are more in the app space, and now when you're asking them to take on fields of responsibility that they generally didn't have experience with, right? So networking, the security management piece, authentication. Like as an app owner, these are generally things that are provided to you by your central IT group. And so in the cloud, having that responsibility in addition to the ongoing, maintenance and operations and all the application migration stuff, we found was just overloading those individuals and essentially stalling them out. So the lack of experience was a big thing. The other one that these customers had in common was an aggressive migration timeline, right? They had a pending contract expiration. They had to get out of a data center. Some of them were spun out, so they had to actually get out by a certain date, otherwise pay penalties. And others were just trying to, like say, hardware refresh, right? They had a 5-year refresh coming up, and they didn't want to have to spend that money if they really wanted to get the cloud. So they all had some kind of compelling event that was motivating them to move quickly. Otherwise, if you don't have that, it gets very difficult to have a unified cloud approach, because you have to have executive leadership as well as the central IT group and the application teams all agreeing. And when you have, essentially this compelling event, it's much easier to get that consensus and alignment. All of them also needed to select an operating and migration partner, right? They didn't, because of lack of experience, believe that they could operate themselves, right? And the migration partner obviously was another big selection piece. One that's not on here that I'll add in as well is that a lot of them were in regulated environments, right, where the cost of failure was significant. It's very easy to get going in the cloud and put things up, but to go through the effort to then prove that you meet PCI, HIPAA, ISO, SOC, GDPR, et cetera, is a time-consuming affair. And so they needed a risk mitigation aspect of the solution. So as much of that was taken care of out of the box as possible. The requirements here is, they had, a partner to complete the migration with low risk, right? So like when we see these migrations, that's a big factor. It's the tech actually becomes secondary. The toolchain fit is obviously a consideration of it, but in the day, they need to minimize the risk. Because that's the biggest thing. Like if they're moving a production application across, they can't have prolonged outages. They can't put themselves in a worse compliance position, an auditability standpoint. And so for them, when they were selecting a partner, they really looked for a way to minimize that risk. And then the knowledge and expertise, obviously, to migrate the application and over to the cloud. That was another big piece, right? So having that capability as well was very important. Okay. So the results, that we saw, with these customers that we picked is that, they were fully optimized in their operations. They had stronger security posture, faster time to operate, and really enabled business transformation. Some of the slides that Mike covered before really spoke to that, right? If you've got all this other work to do, you're going to have less bandwidth to do the work that really matters to your business, which is the applications. Because in the day, operations, if you do it well, nobody really notices. But if you do it poorly, obviously that becomes a real impediment to your business and your agility. Also, what we find too is, rigorous old world processes transported to the cloud don't give you that agility promise either, right? If you're still taking 3 months to do a change approval, you haven't pre-approved, templates that have been reviewed for well architecture. If you don't understand, the baseline for your connectivity, all that is going to be repeated on every single app migration. And so, really what this does is move the customer in a templated, prescriptive way that's already pre-approved, and therefore it's really just dealing with the application pieces. Another thing here is that these are global 2000s, large enterprises. So the threshold for us is $1 billion in annual revenue. We looked at a composite here, 5,000 plus instances or hosts to migrate. They all had aggressive timelines, very large customer base, large employees, and they're all global in their operations. So this isn't a single region. This is a global affair. And DR and failover on a regional basis is a real thing, both from a compliance perspective, also from just the standpoint of making sure that business continuity. Go back. This is just one of the quotes, from one of the customers that was surveyed here, and what they were really looking for is basically an all-in solution. Obviously, they wanted to maintain the agility for their applications, but as it related to the infrastructure, and we often cover things like foundations, migrations, operations, they needed a solution for all three. And, from this perspective, this particular customer was really looking to like, okay, what are the parts of the business that I want to retain that are important to me, and what are the ones I'm okay actually letting somebody else handle them, right? And so from a perspective of us laying down the landing zone, bringing that prescriptive belief, helping assist with the acceleration of the migration, and then doing the ongoing operations, they were able to have that all happen with the service. So in terms of the output of the study, so obviously the high level hit here is the return on investment, right? And so what they really compared is if a customer was to do this themselves, what would AMS in the picture, right? And so when they looked at various categories here, and there were 6, right? So the resource and cost avoidance. So this is having to hire people to do the migration as well as do the ongoing operation, right? Configure the accounts, actually do the work, and continue to support that. Then the other category here was the cost savings from accelerating the migration. So because they could actually accelerate it, a lot of the costs that they would have incurred with a more delayed migration didn't happen. So for example, data center lease costs, hardware refreshes, being able to have to continue to support like that on premise. If you can get out of the data center a year earlier, that has a significant savings. And then the optimized resource efficiency gain. So this was really, having the people with the skill set stay one, and again, not having to hire additional people, and then reducing the actual impact of outages and events, right? So if you have incidents, the frequency of the incidents are reduced simply because you've done a lot of the prescriptive upfront stuff. But then the ones you do have, it's much easier to get out of them quicker because again, you've got a lot of automation and prescriptive guidance on how to do that. One of our customers, we work with them, particularly on their key production applications, to have a run book for restoration, and to work with them in a partnership in a war room setting to actually restore their workloads. In fact, we do game days proactively ahead of time, and so again, there's some savings there as it relates to that. The management of the infrastructure fees. So this is, again, cost savings in terms of having AMS do the ongoing operate versus having to hire and retain the staff to do it themselves. And because we are heavily automated, we're in tune of like 88% on all activities. We can keep our costs very low, and we pass this back on to customers. And so we don't view ourselves as really a replacement for an in-house team, but more of an augmentation, right? And a skill gap augment. Okay, and then obviously through improved, so Forrester brought research to the table in terms of when customers have security events and security impacts, what is the overall cost to the business? And so that was the 5th category. And then when your websites are down, in this particular composite study, it was a e-commerce customer that they picked. They don't have financial transactions. There's loss of trust with their customers, and they can't continue to process orders, and therefore impacts operationally and security wise have a bottom line impact on their business. And so when they looked at the net present value across what it would have cost themselves to do it versus what they would do it with AMS, these are kind of the results I saw, right? So there's a lot more details in the study. They kind of walk through each of the categories, what was actually selected for each, and just overall very detailed in terms of how they do it. These are the additional benefits that they wanted to include in the study, although they weren't quantifiable, right? So the ones I mentioned before were dollars and cents that they were able to attribute based on research and their experience in the composite and actual data they got back from the customers that were interviewed. These are the more intangible ones, which are hard to put a dollar figure amount, but we felt it was important to include them because they actually are transformational, right? So the first one, enablement of innovation, right? So the agility of applications is key. And as a lot of these traditional businesses are being disrupted, being able to move quicker and listen to their customers and innovate, take on an agile development method, get features out sooner, take feedback with small incremental steps and releases, freeing up your app team from the day-to-day undifferentiated operations component of this and figuring out landing zones which do nothing to enable the innovation allows that team now to focus 100% almost on that. right? So not just freeing the team up, but if you can provision fully compliant, well-architected stacks and infrastructure in minutes, and test your theories and environments, that enables the whole business to move quicker. And so that's kind of where we looked at this enablement of innovation is like if you've got teams that are now empowered on their own to iterate quickly, but within the guardrails that have been defined for the business from a security operate and corporate control standpoint, um, that makes everything go quicker, right? Which should in turn, make the customers happier with the end products and the company more successful. That's a lot of the philosophy that we use with our service and many AWS services ourselves. The other intangible here was guaranteed adherence to cloud operational best practices, right? So when you have a bunch of bespoke teams doing shadow IT or doing it in a desynchronized manner, some will do well, some will do not well, depending on the skill sets they have and their aptitude in the operational work and their focus, right? A lot of people on deadlines and security operations best practices are generally under pressure in those scenarios to move quicker. And so concessions are made, and rarely do teams double back because, again, once they're live, they now have operational issues, scaling issues they have to attend to. So a lot of the fast follow things that we all intend generally don't end up happening because you're going to need to solve some problems now that you're live. And so having a guarantee, like I said, that you could deploy this infrastructure and have it work out of the box as intended, meet the majority of your infrastructure guidelines in terms of security and compliance, so you don't have to worry about that. Was again a huge enabler to the app teams to move quicker, right? And then security and compliance is also happy too because now they're not having to individually and bespokely inspect everything and hold up releases by asking the same questions over and over again for people who didn't follow the process. The other one was the cost optimization. And so this is very much an Amazon principle. We want our customers to spend less with us, right? We proactively identify cost savings. It's not just price reductions, absent competitive pressure, but we also look for underutilization, right? So tools like Trusted Advisor are a great example of that, where there are checks that say, hey, you're underutilized here. This particular host could probably be downsized, or you could get rid of it, or collapse it, or consolidate. We are, earning that trust with our customers by showing them how they can basically not waste their money. And that is embodied in AMS as well. One of our functions is we call it financial and capacity management, where we're always looking for opportunities to actually reduce the spend. Now that has an impact as well of reducing our fee because we're a derivative of the underlying AWS usage. But we believe that's necessary for customers to then be freed up and enabled to actually do the things that are innovative and will actually end up driving more growth. Right? If you trust that workloads you put on, you're going to get the most for your money, you're going to be more inclined to put more workloads on. And so that was a big piece of this that we wanted to include as sort of an additional outcome. The fact that you are having a trusted partner looking over your shoulder, questioning whether or not you're using things the most effectively. And then peace of mind. So again, just having somebody with experience at scale with some of the world's largest enterprises handling your day-to-day operations on your behalf, but with full transparency, I think provides a certain amount of peace of mind to these large enterprises, right? And this, is an alternative approach where we're using native AWS tools like CloudTrail, CloudWatch, CloudWatch logs. Customers have read-only roles. They can go in, they can audit, do their own aggregation of logs and their own tools outside of us, and it's very open and transparent. We do not take a black box approach where it's just trust us, we're fine, and to see what we're doing, you have to audit us with specific requests. It's fully open at all times, and we believe that again is a way to build trust with customers and to make them feel that they can do their own audit and analysis beside us to keep us accountable and honest on our due diligence as well. So that was another one that doesn't necessarily have a dollar amount, but was, I believe, very critical to. Okay, well, that's my section.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Forrest. Really appreciate having you guys on and going through that material. It's obviously a very valuable impact, both the soft side and the financial side of the AMS offering. So thanks again for diving into all that detail there.